Did you know that one of Johnny Cash's funniest songs was actually recorded inside a prison? Yeah. I'm serious. Not a studio. Not a concert hall. A real prison. And the best part? That song didn't just get laughs, it became one of the biggest hits of his entire career. I mean, imagine this for a second. You're standing in front of hundreds of inmates, some doing life behind bars, and instead of singing something dark or serious, you go and sing a song that makes everyone in the room laugh out loud. That's exactly what Johnny Cash did. And here's the thing, this wasn't just any song. This one had humor, emotion, and one of the weirdest storylines you've probably ever heard in country music. It was called A Boy Named Sue. And once you hear the story behind it, you'll never forget it. But before we get into all of that, let me ask you something. Ever felt like life handed you something totally unfair? Like, something random that made your life harder, but in the end, made you stronger? That's the heart of this song. And I think that's why people loved it so much. So let's rewind a bit. It's February 1969. Johnny Cash is walking into San Quentin State Prison in California. Now, this wasn't his first time singing in a prison. He'd already performed at Folsom Prison the year before, and that concert was a huge success. But San Quentin? That was different. The crowd was rougher. The vibe was tense. But Johnny wasn't nervous. In fact, he felt right at home. He always had a soft spot for people on the edges of society, the misfits, the broken ones, the guys who made bad choices but still had a spark of hope in them. That's probably why he kept going back to these prisons. He didn't just sing for the inmates. He connected with them. But that day at San Quentin, something special happened. Johnny didn't just bring the usual mix of deep and soulful country songs. He brought something new. Something funny. Something completely unexpected. He brought A Boy Named Sue. Now, let's talk about that song for a second. It tells the story of a man whose father left him when he was just a baby, but before walking out of his life, that father did one last thing, he gave his son the name Sue. Yup. That's right. He named his son Sue. And as you can probably imagine, growing up with a name like that wasn't exactly easy. The guy got teased. Bullied. Picked on by other kids. He had to fight all the time, just to defend himself. And every time he got into trouble, every time someone laughed at him, he blamed the same person, his dad. So the song follows Sue on this long, angry journey to find the man who gave him that name. He finally tracks him down in a bar. And then? He punches him in the face. They fight like wild animals. Tables flip. Drinks fly. It's a mess. But when it's all over, the father looks at him and says, "Son, I knew I wouldn't be around to help you grow up. So I gave you a name that would make you tough." Crazy, right? It's ridiculous. But it hits you. Because as funny as it sounds, it also makes a weird kind of sense. Sometimes, the hardest things in our lives are the very things that make us strong. Now here's the wild part, Johnny had never even rehearsed this song before that day. Seriously. He hadn't practiced it. He just got the lyrics, scribbled on a piece of paper, and read them right there on stage. No warm-up. No polish. Just raw, honest delivery. And guess what? The inmates loved it. They laughed. They clapped. Some of them were actually doubled over laughing. You could hear the energy in that room shift. For those few minutes, those men weren't just prisoners. They were people again. People with real emotions. People who could laugh, even behind bars. And that, right there, was the magic. Now, here's a fun little twist you probably didn't see coming. Johnny didn't write that song. It was actually written by Shel Silverstein. Yeah, the guy who wrote children's books like The Giving Tree and Where the Sidewalk Ends. Turns out, Shell had this funny, poetic way of looking at the world. And when he showed Johnny the lyrics, Johnny knew right away, it was something special. So fast forward a little bit. That performance at San Quentin gets recorded for a live album. And originally, A Boy Named Sue was just supposed to be part of the set list. Nothing fancy. But when the folks at Columbia Records heard how the crowd reacted, and how Johnny delivered those lines like he was telling a wild story at a campfire, they knew they had something big. So they released it as a single. And guess what? It blew up. It ended up becoming Johnny Cash's biggest hit ever on the Billboard charts. And no, we're not just talking about a country hit that did well in its little genre corner. We're talking about a song that climbed all the way up to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. That's the chart where rock legends, pop icons, and soul powerhouses all fight for space. So yeah, it wasn't just a big deal for country music. It was a big deal for music, period. Now think about this for a second, it was 1969. This was the era of Woodstock, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, the Beatles were still dominating everything, and Motown was on fire. And yet, there's Johnny Cash, standing there with just a guitar and a sheet of paper, singing a funny little country song recorded inside a prison, and that song holds its own with the biggest acts in the world. That tells you something, right? So, why did it work so well? What made A Boy Named Sue explode like that? Here's the truth. It wasn't because the recording was perfect. Because, honestly, it wasn't. It didn't have a polished studio sound. It wasn't carefully edited or mixed with flawless harmonies. Johnny didn't even sing it the same way each time. He kind of half-talked, half-sang his way through it. Some lines didn't rhyme perfectly. Some verses felt improvised. But none of that mattered. What did matter, was that it felt real. It felt alive. It felt like someone was just telling you a wild story over a cup of coffee, one that started with a laugh, then got deep when you weren't expecting it. It was raw. It was hilarious. It was full of soul. And most of all, it was honest. And let's be real, back then, people were kind of tired. Tired of the shiny, overproduced, smile-for-the-camera music that didn't really say anything. People were going through a lot. The 60s had been full of change, civil rights, the Vietnam War, protests, loss, big dreams, broken promises. There was so much noise everywhere. And then here comes Johnny, with this weird, unexpected song about a guy named Sue. And somehow, through all the silliness, it tells the truth in a way that just hits you. Because if we're honest with ourselves, we all have our own Sue story. We all carry something that made us different, something that made life harder, but in a way, made us who we are. Maybe it wasn't your name. Maybe it was where you grew up. Maybe it was the way people looked at you, or the way you looked at yourself. But somewhere along the way, you probably got tough because of it. You learned how to survive. How to push back. How to walk into a room like you belonged, even when you didn't feel like you did. And when you hear that song, when you hear Johnny laugh through the line, "My name is Sue," how do you do? It hits something inside you. Because yeah, it's funny. But it's also real. It's also kind of deep. It's weird how a joke can sneak in the truth like that. And remember, he performed it live, with no rehearsal. Just a few scribbled lyrics on paper, and that was it. He didn't try to get it right. He didn't care about perfection. He didn't need a second take. He just stood there, read the lyrics out loud, and told the story. And the crowd of inmates? They loved it. You can hear it in the recording, the laughter, the cheers, the clapping. It's one of the most genuine audience reactions you'll ever hear on a live album. Because those guys weren't laughing just because the song was funny. They were laughing because they understood it. They'd all felt like outsiders. They'd all had to toughen up to survive. Some of them probably had names or stories that got them into fights or made them feel ashamed. So when Johnny sang about a guy growing up with a name like Sue, and all the pain and struggle that came with it, they didn't just find it funny, they found it familiar. It was one of those rare moments where a song does more than just entertain. It connects. It heals a little. It reminds you that even the stuff that once made you feel weak, might actually be what made you strong. And the fact that it was Johnny Cash singing it? That just made it even better. Because Johnny wasn't some clean-cut, polished pop star. He was flawed. He struggled. He had his demons. He knew what it felt like to hit rock bottom, and what it took to climb back out. He didn't pretend to be perfect. And people loved him for that. Now let's pause for a second and think about something important. How often do we hide the parts of ourselves that feel messy or uncomfortable? How often do we cover up the weird stuff, the awkward stories, the things that made us feel small, the things we think others will laugh at? We push those parts down. We try to smooth them out, make ourselves look polished and put together. But what if those are the parts that actually connect us? What if the stuff we're most afraid to show is the stuff that makes us the most human? Johnny could have kept that song in his back pocket. He could have thought, it's too silly, or people won't get it, or this doesn't sound like a real hit. But he didn't. He stood in front of a crowd of inmates, with a sheet of paper in his hand, and he told the story anyway. He didn't worry about missing a line. He didn't care if the rhythm was off. He didn't stress over every detail. He just trusted the story. And people felt it. That's what made it great. That's what made it timeless. It wasn't the production. It wasn't the marketing. It was the feeling behind it. The truth in it. The honesty. So if there's one thing you remember from this whole story, let it be this: don't be afraid to share your truth. Even if it's weird. Even if it's funny. Even if it doesn't make sense to anyone but you. Because somewhere out there, someone needs to hear it. Someone might laugh because they see themselves in it. Someone might cry because they've been carrying something similar for years. And someone you've never even met, might finally feel seen for the very first time. Just like those men did at San Quentin, all those years ago. All from a song about a boy named Sue. And hey, now that we've shared this moment together, I want to hear from you. What's the most unexpected song that's ever made you laugh, or cry, or just stop and feel something deep? Was it something silly that caught you off guard? Was it a country song, like this one? Or maybe an old-school rock ballad? Or was it something so random, even you didn't see it coming? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to read your story. I really would. Because I think music connects us all in ways words alone can't always do. And hearing what you connect with? That's the best part of this whole thing. And hey, if you enjoyed this video, if it made you smile or maybe gave you a new perspective on Johnny Cash or just reminded you of the power of music, do me a little favor. Tap that like button. It helps the channel more than you know. And if you want more stories like this, real ones, powerful ones, ones that hit you in the heart, make sure you're subscribed. And go check out the video we did on Johnny's performance at Folsom Prison. That one's got even more emotion, more grit, and a behind-the-scenes moment that almost stopped the whole thing from happening. You'll be surprised by how close it came to falling apart. Trust me, it's a wild ride, and you won't regret watching it. And one last thing. If someone ever gives you something that feels like a burden, whether it's a name, a story, a label, or a challenge, remember this. You might end up stronger because of it. You might become tougher. Smarter. Kinder. You might become exactly who you were meant to be, not in spite of that burden, but because of it. So yeah, if someone ever names you Sue, take it like a champ. See you next time.